When was the last time you looked in the mirror and felt a quiet frustration with who you become? Not the surface level details of your appearance, but the person behind your eyes, the energy you carry, the confidence you project, the life you're actually living. Too often, we drift through days without realizing that our habits, the small, invisible choices we make, are sculpting us into someone we never intended to be. And then one morning, we wake up and wonder, how did I get here? Why do I feel stuck in the same loop, repeating patterns that drain me instead of fuel me? The truth is, transformation isn't born from massive leaps. It begins in the smallest corners of your life, in the decisions so tiny they feel insignificant. But those micro choices hold power. They are seeds, and given time, they grow into an identity that can either chain you down or set you free. You might believe that in order to change, you need to overhaul your entire life, break everything apart, and rebuild from scratch. But that belief is what keeps most people frozen in place. They convince themselves they need the perfect plan, the right timing, the big dramatic push, and so they wait. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, all while their future self remains trapped inside, waiting to be released. What if I told you that the path to becoming unrecognizable, so different, so elevated, so alive that people who once knew you can hardly believe who you've become, doesn't start with massive effort? It starts with 7 small acts of self-care. Micro habits so simple, they're almost invisible, yet they carry the weight of transformation. Think about it. Every great change you've ever admired in someone else began with a quiet decision they made when no one was watching. Maybe they decided to walk instead of scroll. Maybe they drank water instead of another soda. Maybe they chose to sit with their thoughts instead of drowning them out with noise. These micro moments stack. They rewire the brain, reset the body, and reshape the spirit. That's why today matters. Because in this very moment, you're standing at a fork in the road. One path keeps you in the comfort of sameness. The other takes you somewhere new. And the choice doesn't require you to leap. It requires you to step. Here's why you should stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll hold in your hands 7 micro habits designed not just to make you feel better for a day, but to unlock a version of yourself you may not have met yet. A version filled with focus, clarity, resilience, and quiet strength. You'll see how simple changes in your daily rhythm can ripple outward until your energy, your health, your mindset, and even the way you carry yourself become unrecognizable. Imagine walking into a room 6 months from now and having people pause, not because of what you're wearing, but because of who you've become. Imagine living with a calm confidence that doesn't shout but radiates. Imagine waking up with energy, carrying yourself with certainty, and trusting your own decisions again. That is the emotional reward waiting for you on the other side of these micro habits. So let this be the moment you stop wishing and start moving. Stay with me, and I'll show you how 7 small acts of self-care can take the person you are today and transform you into the person you've always known you could be. The version of you that is no longer held back, no longer invisible, no longer trapped in old cycles. The version of you that feels alive, unstoppable, and unrecognizable. Change always begins with awareness. Before you can build new habits, you must first see the invisible patterns that keep you stuck where you are. Most people never pause long enough to realize that their exhaustion, their lack of motivation, their endless cycle of distraction isn't random. It's the direct result of what they've been practicing every single day. You are already living by habits, most of them so automatic you don't even notice them. The way you reach for your phone before you even breathe in the morning. The way you fill silence with noise instead of reflection. The way you tell yourself you'll start tomorrow and then push it one more day further. These are habits too. And they've been shaping you silently into someone you may not want to become. That's the hidden truth. You cannot escape habits. They either work for you or against you, but they are always working. Your identity is nothing more than the result of the small choices you've repeated until they've hardened into a pattern. And if you've been stuck, if you've been tired of your own reflection, it isn't because you're weak. It's because the pattern has been stronger than your awareness. But the moment you see it clearly, the spell begins to break. Once you recognize that your life is the sum of the smallest choices, you realize that the power to transform is always in your hands. Psychologists call it the compound effect. Tiny actions repeated consistently grow into massive results over time. Just as dripping water can carve a canyon through solid rock, your smallest decisions carve out the person you are becoming. But here's what most people get wrong. They wait for motivation to appear before they act. They assume that once they feel ready, they'll finally change. But waiting for motivation is like waiting for lightning to strike in the same place twice. It's unreliable. The truth is that action comes first and motivation follows. You don't build momentum by thinking, you build it by doing, even if the step feels small, especially if the step feels small. Every time you honor a micro habit, you send a powerful message to your brain. I am someone who shows up for myself. That's not just positive thinking. Neuroscience shows that habits literally rewire your brain through a process called neuroplasticity. Each repetition strengthens a neural pathway, making it easier the next time. With enough consistency, the behavior shifts from effort to identity. You no longer try to act healthy, you simply are healthy. You no longer struggle to focus, you have become a focused person. That's the magic of micro habits. They are not just actions, they are votes for the kind of person you want to be. And here's where the emotional shift happens. When you begin to act differently, even in the smallest way, your brain releases a reward. You feel a spark of pride, a glimpse of control, a taste of freedom. That spark is addictive and it grows stronger with every repetition. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes effortless. What once felt overwhelming becomes automatic. The person who once doubted themselves starts to trust themselves again. That is the doorway to transformation. So take a moment right now to realize the power you already hold. You don't need to change everything overnight. You only need to choose one small act of self-care and practice it until it becomes who you are. That is how you become unrecognizable. Not by burning yourself out with massive changes, but by stacking micro victories until they form a life that feels completely different. This is where the shift begins. The most powerful transformations are born in silence. Before a new habit takes root, before a single change becomes visible to the outside world, there is an internal decision, a quiet commitment that only you can hear. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It begins in a whisper. Enough is enough. That whisper is your turning point, and though no one else may notice it, that decision has the power to shift the entire trajectory of your life. What makes it so powerful is that it's deeply personal. No one else can choose it for you. No one else can live inside your mind, carry your thoughts, or feel the weight of your struggles. That responsibility is yours alone, and that's exactly where your power lies. Because once you stop waiting for the world to change and instead take ownership of your own patterns, you stop being a passenger and step into the role of creator. You realize that becoming unrecognizable isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about honoring the deepest vision you hold for yourself. And here's the truth you've probably sensed: change feels difficult, not because it's impossible, but because your brain is wired to protect you from discomfort. It craves what is familiar, even if that familiarity is draining you. That's why it feels easier to repeat old habits than to carve new ones. But familiarity is not the same as fulfillment. Comfort is not the same as growth. What feels safe in the moment often costs you your future. The price of staying the same is always higher than the price of change. When you take a single step outside of that comfort zone, when you choose water instead of sugar, movement instead of sitting, reflection instead of distraction, you're not just changing your behavior. You are teaching your nervous system that you can survive discomfort, that you are not fragile, that you are capable of more than the old pattern suggested. With each repetition, your confidence expands. You begin to trust that you can keep promises to yourself. That trust is the foundation of all transformation because it turns hope into identity. Every great breakthrough in human history has been built on the same principle: small actions sustained over time. Athletes don't win medals by practicing once. Writers don't create masterpieces in a single night. Scientists don't discover truth by guessing once and walking away. They repeat, refine, and persist. And while the world celebrates the outcome, the real victory happened in the unseen, in the quiet moments where they chose discipline over distraction, focus over chaos, persistence over doubt. Your life is no different. The world may one day celebrate the person you've become, but the real victory will happen in these hidden choices you make for yourself day after day. And here is where the momentum builds. Once you see yourself keeping those small commitments, something shifts deep inside. You stop identifying as someone who struggles and you start identifying as someone who grows. Your self-image begins to rise to meet your actions. And as psychology teaches us, humans always act in alignment with the identity they believe is theirs. If you see yourself as disciplined, you behave with discipline. If you see yourself as healthy, you behave with health. If you see yourself as unstoppable, you stop finding reasons to quit. This is the quiet revolution that makes you unrecognizable, not in a distant future, but in the mirror staring back at you day by day. Every small habit you claim becomes another brushstroke on the canvas of your transformation. And when you finally step back, you realize you've painted a life you once only dreamed of. There's a quiet strength in choosing to care for yourself in ways the world cannot see. While others chase approval, validation, and external recognition, you begin to cultivate power from within. That power is born from small, intentional acts of self-respect repeated until they become unshakable. The moment you realize that self-care is not indulgence but discipline, not escape but alignment, you unlock the first doorway to transformation. Because the truth is, you cannot create a life you love while neglecting the foundation that holds it together, your mind, your body, and your spirit. Most people misunderstand self-care. They imagine it as luxury, as something optional, as a reward after everything else is done. But true self-care is not a treat. It is a responsibility. It is not something you squeeze into the corners of your day when you have extra time. It is the very structure that allows you to perform, to grow, to show up fully in the world. And when you shift your perspective, when you begin to see these small habits as non-negotiable, you stop treating your own well-being as secondary. You start treating it as sacred. Think of the energy you carry into your daily life. If you neglect yourself, you bring exhaustion, irritability, and chaos into every interaction. But when you honor yourself, even in small ways, you radiate calm, clarity, and presence. People can feel it without you saying a word. That is why those who commit to self-care consistently begin to feel unrecognizable. Not because they change what they look like, but because they change what they project. Confidence is not an accident. It is the result of living in harmony with the choices that lift you higher. And here's what science shows us. When you engage in even the smallest positive behaviors, you trigger what psychologists call upward spirals. A single small act of care improves your mood, which improves your motivation, which improves your performance, which leads to more positive actions. One glass of water leads to more energy, which leads to better focus, which leads to stronger decisions, which leads to pride in yourself, which makes the next choice easier. Upward spirals transform your life not through force, but through momentum. What begins as a tiny shift compounds until it becomes your new normal. The beauty of these micro habits is that they don't require perfection. You don't need to change every part of yourself overnight. You simply need to keep showing up in small, consistent ways. And when you miss a day, you don't collapse into guilt. You return with renewed strength because one mistake doesn't erase your progress. What matters is direction, not perfection. Every step you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. And each vote brings that identity closer until it no longer feels like effort, but truth. Imagine the version of yourself who wakes up with energy, who walks into each day with clarity, who treats themselves with respect so deeply that it overflows into how they treat others. Imagine how different your relationships, your work, your dreams would look if you carried yourself with that unshakable foundation. That version of you is not distant. It is waiting for you to choose it, one micro habit at a time. And when you choose it, the world begins to respond differently. Opportunities seem to appear. People treat you with more respect, and your own reflection finally matches the vision you hold in your heart. This is the shift that self-care creates. Not a shallow adjustment, but a transformation from the inside out. A life built on habits that no longer drain you but empower you. A life where you no longer apologize for taking care of yourself because you know that by doing so, you become the strongest, clearest, and most unstoppable version of you. The difference between the person you are today and the person you know you could become lies in the space between intention and action. Almost everyone intends to change. Almost everyone thinks about becoming healthier, more focused, more disciplined, more alive. But intention without action is just a dream that slowly erodes into regret. What separates those who transform from those who stay stuck is not talent, luck, or timing. It is the courage to act on the smallest steps even when no one else notices. Your brain will always try to convince you to wait. It will whisper that you don't have time, that you're too tired, that today isn't the right moment. It will give you every reason to stay the same because sameness feels safe. But safety is a prison when it locks you into patterns that no longer serve you. True growth requires you to interrupt that cycle, to take one intentional step forward before your mind has time to argue you out of it. And that is the power of microhabits. They are small enough to bypass resistance, but significant enough to create momentum. They allow you to act before your excuses have time to catch up. Every time you follow through on a microhabit, you reclaim trust in yourself. Think about how powerful that is. For many people, the deepest pain they carry isn't failure. It's a feeling of constantly breaking promises to themselves, saying they'll start tomorrow and not following through, setting goals and abandoning them halfway. Over time, this erodes self-respect until they no longer believe their own words. But when you show up for even the smallest commitment, you rebuild that trust. You prove to yourself that your word matters, that your actions align with your intentions, and that trust is the foundation of unstoppable confidence. Confidence doesn't come from shouting affirmations into the mirror. It doesn't come from pretending to be strong while doubting yourself inside. Real confidence is earned through action. It is the quiet certainty that you will do what you say you will do. It is the calm knowledge that you can rely on yourself no matter what. When you practice microhabits, you're not just building routines, you're building evidence. Evidence that you are disciplined, evidence that you are consistent, evidence that you are strong. And with enough evidence, doubt loses its grip. The science is clear. When you align action with intention, your brain rewards you. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, is released not only when you achieve a goal, but every time you take a meaningful step toward it. That means your brain is wired to reinforce progress no matter how small. Each completed habit, no matter how minor it feels, sparks a reward that makes you want to continue. This is how momentum is built, not from giant leaps, but from steady, repeated signals that tell your brain, we are moving forward. And as momentum builds, something extraordinary happens. The future version of yourself that once felt distant begins to feel real. You start to think differently, act differently, carry yourself differently. You no longer need to force belief. You begin to embody it. People around you notice, not because you announce your changes, but because your energy speaks louder than words. You walk differently. You choose differently. You live differently. That is the moment you begin to look unrecognizable, not only to others, but to yourself. This is the transformation hidden inside microhabits. They are not small at all. They are the quiet foundation of an entirely new identity. And once that identity takes root, there is no limit to who you can become. The moment you begin to see yourself differently, your entire reality shifts. You start to realize that your environment, your routines, even the people around you respond to the energy you carry. When you live on autopilot, drained by old habits, life feels heavy. Everything becomes a burden, and opportunities slip past unnoticed. But when you begin to operate with clarity, when your micro habits align your mind and body, you move through the world with a different rhythm. You don't just live, you lead yourself. And that self-leadership radiates outward until life itself begins to reorganize around you. This is the essence of becoming unrecognizable. Not just changing how you look or how you act, but shifting the very frequency you operate on. People feel it before they understand it. They notice a calmness in your presence, a steadiness in your decisions, a quiet authority in the way you carry yourself. You don't need to prove it with words because it is written in your actions, your discipline, and your consistency. That is the kind of transformation that can't be faked because it isn't about performance. It's about alignment. And alignment begins with choosing what truly matters over what only distracts. Think about how much of life is wasted on habits that drain instead of fuel. Scrolling for hours but feeling emptier afterward. Reaching for quick comfort that leaves you restless. Surrounding yourself with noise to avoid facing silence. These patterns don't just steal time, they steal identity. Every moment you trade away to distraction is a moment you could have used to build yourself stronger. But the instant you reclaim that power, even in the smallest way, you begin to reset the balance. You stop leaking energy and start channeling it toward the person you want to become. Psychology shows us that identity is not fixed. It is fluid, constantly reshaped by behavior. You don't need to wait for some dramatic event to redefine yourself. You redefine yourself every time you act in alignment with who you want to be. Each micro habit becomes a declaration. This is who I am now. The person who drinks water instead of numbing with sugar. The person who sits in silence instead of drowning in noise. The person who takes a step forward instead of making another excuse. These acts may feel small, but they rewrite the story you tell yourself. And once your story changes, your future changes with it. This is why self-respect grows so quickly when you commit to small habits. It isn't about perfection, it's about proof. You begin to prove to yourself over and over that you are capable of honoring your word. That proof is more powerful than any external validation because it builds an unshakable foundation inside you. When you can trust yourself, nothing outside of you can take that away. Challenges still come, setbacks still happen, but you carry a certainty that you will rise. That certainty is what makes you unstoppable. And here's the beautiful paradox. As you focus on these small, private acts of self-care, the external results others notice, your energy, your confidence, your presence become inevitable. You no longer chase recognition, yet recognition comes. You no longer strive to be seen, yet people can't help but notice the change. This is the power of becoming unrecognizable. It is not about creating a mask to impress others. It is about shedding what no longer belongs to you and stepping fully into the identity you were always meant to live. Transformation accelerates the moment you realize that discipline is not punishment, but freedom. Many people resist structure because they believe it will limit them, but the truth is the opposite. Lack of discipline traps you in cycles of fatigue, distraction, and regret. Discipline, even in its smallest forms, unlocks choice. When you build micro habits, you reclaim control over your time, your energy, and your direction. Suddenly, you are no longer pulled by impulses. You are guided by intention. That shift alone can change the entire course of your life. Your brain thrives on clarity. When you create small, repeatable habits, you remove the endless friction of decision fatigue. You no longer waste energy asking yourself whether you should do something. You simply do it because it is who you are now. That consistency frees up mental space to focus on growth, creativity, and possibility. Instead of battling yourself at every turn, you begin to move forward with ease. And the more ease you create, the more momentum you gain. What once felt like effort begins to feel like flow. Think about how powerful it is to walk through life with that kind of rhythm. Waking up already knowing the small steps that strengthen you. Moving through your day aligned with choices that keep you grounded. Ending each night with the quiet satisfaction that you honored yourself again. This rhythm is not dramatic. It does not demand perfection. It simply builds layer upon layer until your entire identity is shaped by consistency. That consistency is what makes you reliable to yourself, and reliability is what makes you powerful. Psychologists remind us that the strongest form of motivation comes from identity-based change. When you stop saying, I want to be disciplined, and instead say, I am disciplined, your actions shift to match the identity. Every micro habit you complete reinforces that identity until it becomes effortless. You no longer need to fight with yourself because your actions and your self-image are aligned. This alignment creates a deep sense of integrity, a wholeness that is rare in a world of distraction and doubt. And here's where the transformation deepens. When you carry yourself with integrity, people sense it. They trust you more, respect you more, listen to you more. But the most important part is not what others see, it's how you see yourself. You stop questioning your worth. You stop hesitating before opportunities. You stop shrinking in the face of challenges. Instead, you rise because you have evidence within you that you can be counted on. That evidence is the most valuable resource you will ever possess. The beauty of micro habits is that they are available to you right now. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment or a burst of motivation. You don't need to rearrange your entire life. You only need to choose one small action and honor it. And when you do, you are not just checking off a task, you are casting a vote for the future you. Each vote makes that identity stronger, clearer, and more undeniable. Over time, this discipline creates freedom. freedom from the noise of excuses, freedom from the weight of regret, freedom from the patterns that used to hold you back. You begin to live in alignment with the person you were meant to be. And in that alignment, you become unstoppable. This is the discipline that doesn't chain you down. It lifts you up until you rise so high that even you can hardly recognize who you once were. There comes a point where the habits you practice no longer feel like effort, but like oxygen. What once felt like discipline becomes the natural rhythm of your life. And with that shift comes a deeper kind of freedom, the freedom to rise above old limitations. You begin to notice that the person you used to be, the one who hesitated, procrastinated, and doubted, feels distant, almost like a memory fade into the background. That's when you realize you are no longer just practicing change. You have become change itself. This is the hidden reward of micro habits. They don't just create results, they create identity. And when your identity shifts, the limits you once believed in dissolve. You stop asking if you are capable and begin asking what else is possible. That subtle change in perspective is the seed of greatness, because your life will always expand or contract based on the questions you allow yourself to ask. When your habits give you evidence of strength, you begin to live with curiosity instead of fear, exploration instead of hesitation, courage instead of retreat. Your energy changes, your body responds, your mind clears. And in that clarity, you start to see opportunities that were invisible before, not because they weren't there, but because your old patterns kept you blind to them. Self-neglect narrows your vision. Self-care expands it. When you operate from exhaustion, you're trapped in survival mode. But when you fuel yourself with consistent acts of care, your brain shifts into growth mode. You see paths where you once saw walls. You see solutions where you once saw problems. You see potential where you once only saw limits. And the people around you can feel it. They may not know the exact habits you've built, but they notice the way you stand taller, the way you respond with calm instead of panic, the way you move with a sense of direction. You become an example without trying to be one. That is the quiet power of transformation. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are becoming. They can see it without you saying a word. But here's the most important part. This shift is not about becoming someone else. It's about stripping away everything that was never really you. The doubt, the excuses, the self-sabotage, those were never your truth. They were patterns, learned behaviors, habits you carried but did not define you. When you practice micro habits that honor your mind, body, and spirit, you return to your natural state of strength. You don't create greatness, you uncover it. That realization is liberating because it means you are not chasing an identity outside yourself. You are stepping into what has always been inside you. Every glass of water, every intentional pause, every mindful breath is not just a habit, it is a homecoming. A return to the clarity, confidence, and energy that was always yours to claim. And when you live from that place, you no longer need to force transformation. You embody it. You carry it in your presence, in your choices, in the way you show up for yourself and others. This is the moment you cross the line from effort to embodiment, from striving to becoming. And in that crossing, you step into a life where the old you can no longer survive because you have become unrecognizable even to yourself. What you begin to discover as you rise into this new identity is that the battle was never against the outside world. It was always within. The habits you struggled with, the doubts that held you back, the cycles you couldn't break, all of them lived in the space between who you believed you were and who you truly are. And when you close that gap, when your actions align with your deepest vision, life feels different. You no longer move through the day in conflict with yourself. You move in harmony, and that harmony is what creates unstoppable momentum. The truth is, the world reflects back to you what you reflect to yourself. If you treat your body as an afterthought, life responds with fatigue. If you silence your mind with distraction, life responds with confusion. But when you honor yourself with even the smallest consistent actions, life responds with clarity, with energy, with opportunities you once thought were out of reach. The outer world bends to match the inner one. And that is why these micro habits are not trivial. They are the foundation of everything else you desire. Psychologists call this self-congruence, the alignment between your behavior and your true values. When your daily actions contradict your inner vision, you feel restless, unsatisfied, and disconnected. But when your actions reflect what you value most, your confidence grows naturally without forcing it. You begin to feel at peace with yourself, and that peace becomes the soil where growth takes root. This is why transformation always feels lighter than the struggle that came before. You are no longer dragging yourself against the current. You are flowing in the direction you were meant to go. And with that flow comes resilience. Because even when setbacks happen, and they always will, you don't crumble. You don't spiral back into old patterns. You know how to return to the small grounding habits that keep you steady. You know how to breathe, how to reset, how to realign. That resilience is what separates those who break under pressure from those who rise stronger. It's not about never falling. It's about building the habits that help you rise every single time you do. This strength becomes part of your identity. You no longer see yourself as fragile, as someone who struggles endlessly. You begin to see yourself as resilient, capable, and grounded. And because humans act in alignment with the identity they believe in, your actions naturally follow. You take on challenges not with fear, but with calm determination. You pursue opportunities not with hesitation, but with confidence. You handle obstacles not as reasons to quit, but as reminders of how strong you've become. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. Because once you align identity, habit, and vision, nothing can stop the forward motion. The person you were phased, replaced by the person you were always capable of becoming. That is the true reward of practicing micro habits. Not just the results you see in the mirror, not just the energy you feel in your body, but the profound realization that you are no longer bound by the limits you once believed in. You are building a life where your reflection surprises you, where your presence inspires others, and where your actions create ripples far beyond what you can see. This is the quiet power of transformation. The moment when you no longer chase change because change has already become who you are. The strength you build through micro habits does more than change how you feel today. It rewires the way you see the future. When you were trapped in cycles of neglect and distraction, the future felt heavy, almost intimidating. You carried doubt about whether you could handle what was coming, whether you had the capacity to rise to challenges, whether you could trust yourself to follow through. But as you begin to live in alignment, something shifts. The future stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a canvas. You look ahead not with fear, but with anticipation. You know that no matter what comes, you have built the foundation to face it. This confidence is not arrogance. It is not about pretending to have everything figured out. It is about knowing that you can handle life one step at a time because you have trained yourself to honor the small steps that matter most. This grounded confidence changes everything. It allows you to take risks without being paralyzed by fear. It allows you to pursue goals without being crushed by perfectionism. It allows you to meet uncertainty with calm instead of panic. That kind of stability makes you powerful because most people are tossed around by their emotions while you remain anchored. And here's what happens when you live anchored in self-respect. You expand your capacity. You can give more, create more, build more, not because you are forcing yourself, but because you are no longer weighed down by chaos. You have more energy for the people you love, more focus for the work that matters, more clarity for the dreams that call to you. You are not trying to pour from an empty cup. You are overflowing. That overflow is what allows you to contribute at a higher level, and contribution is what deepens your fulfillment. Psychology shows that humans experience the deepest satisfaction when they live in alignment with both personal growth and contribution. When you grow without giving, life feels empty. When you give without growing, life feels depleting. But when you build yourself through daily habits and then allow that strength to pour into the world, life feels meaningful. That meaning is what sustains you when the initial excitement fades. It is what drives you to keep showing up, even on the days that feel ordinary. Meaning transforms consistency into devotion, and devotion is what makes you unstoppable. Because there will always be moments where motivation is absent, where energy dips, where obstacles appear. But when your actions are tied to meaning, you no longer depend on fleeting emotions to carry you forward. You are carried by purpose. Purpose does not waver with mood, and it does not disappear when challenges arise. Purpose steadies you, reminding you that every small action is part of something bigger than yourself. This is why micro habits matter so much. They may look small, but they are the daily expression of your purpose. Each glass of water, each mindful pause, each moment of movement is not random. It is a brick in the foundation of the life you are building. And as that foundation grows stronger, your vision expands. You stop thinking about merely surviving the week and start imagining what you could create in a year, in 5 years, in a lifetime. The horizon no longer feels distant, it feels possible. This is the moment when you understand that becoming unrecognizable is not just about who you are today. It is about who you will continue to become tomorrow and every day after. It is about building a future so aligned, so powerful, so alive that even your past self would hardly believe it was possible. The beauty of this journey is that the transformation is not sudden. It is steady, layered, and undeniable. Each day you stack one small act of self-care upon another, and without realizing it, you are reshaping the very structure of your life. What once felt overwhelming becomes natural. What once seemed impossible becomes routine, and the momentum you create spills into every area of existence. Health improves, focus sharpens, relationships deepen, and a quiet pride begins to grow within you. That pride is not ego, it is evidence. It is the unshakable reminder that you have chosen yourself again and again until it has become your new reality. This is where the cycle of transformation becomes self-sustaining. Instead of pushing yourself uphill with sheer willpower, you are carried forward by rhythm. Every action reinforces the next. Every win fuels the next step. Every bit of progress creates a hunger for more. You no longer live in resistance to change. You live in harmony with it. And harmony is where growth accelerates because you no longer waste energy fighting yourself. All of your strength is directed toward building, rising, expanding. The shift is psychological as much as it is physical. Your brain begins to normalize success. You stop being surprised by your consistency and start expecting it. You stop doubting your ability and start assuming your own strength. This is not arrogance, it is confidence rooted in evidence. And with each repetition, you deepen that belief. You no longer cling to the identity of the old you because it simply doesn't fit anymore. You cannot see yourself as powerless when every day proves otherwise. And here's the most powerful part. The people around you begin to respond differently, not because you demand their respect, but because your presence commands it naturally. When you treat yourself with discipline, with care, with consistency, the world mirrors that back. Your energy speaks louder than any words. Opportunities find you, doors open, relationships strengthen, not because you chase them, but because you have become the kind of person who attracts them. That is what makes this path so transformative. It does not just change your habits, it changes your environment. But beyond what others notice, the real reward is what you notice within. The way you wake up without dread. The way you meet challenges with calm instead of panic. The way you look in the mirror and recognize strength where there was once hesitation. This inner recognition is the true transformation. You are no longer searching outside yourself for proof of your worth. You carry it within. And that internal certainty is unshakable because it is built on action, not on opinion. Momentum turns into mastery when you no longer have to force yourself to act. You simply act because it is who you are. You no longer debate whether you will follow through. You know you will. You no longer ask if change is possible. You live as proof that it is. That is when the person you used to be fades completely, replaced by a version so focused, so resilient, so alive that the old patterns cannot even touch you. This is not the end of growth. It is the beginning of a life where growth is the norm, a life where you rise each day knowing you are stronger than yesterday, and tomorrow you will be stronger still. A life where becoming unrecognizable is not a one-time shift, but an endless unfolding into the limitless potential of who you were always meant to be. There comes a moment when the changes you've made are no longer about effort, but about identity. You stop asking how long you can keep it up because you know this is simply who you are now. You no longer measure your progress only by the mirror or by numbers or by what others say. You measure it by the way you feel aligned within yourself, the way you carry yourself through the day, the way you face struggles with resilience rather than despair. This is the point where self-care stops being an activity and becomes your foundation. And once your foundation is strong, everything you build upon it rises higher than you ever thought possible. The truth is, most people spend their lives patching cracks in a weak foundation, trying to push forward while ignoring the structure beneath them. They seek quick fixes, distractions, and external validation, all while their inner world crumbles from neglect. But when you commit to these micro habits, you are rebuilding that foundation brick by brick. You are not running from the cracks. You are sealing them, strengthening them, and reinforcing them until nothing can shake you. That is why this process makes you unrecognizable. It is not surface level change. It is a reconstruction of your core. And once the core shifts, everything else follows. Decisions become clearer because you are no longer ruled by chaos. Focus sharpens because you are no longer drained by neglect. Confidence grows because you live in alignment with what you promised yourself. You stop breaking your own trust, and that inner trust changes everything. You no longer doubt your ability to follow through. You know you will because you have proven it to yourself repeatedly. That kind of self-trust is rare and it is magnetic. It makes you unshakable because while the world may shift and people may falter, you know you can rely on yourself. That inner reliability opens doors to freedom. You no longer live trapped in cycles of starting and quitting, hoping and failing, hiding and pretending. You live free because you are consistent. And consistency gives you something no shortcut can ever provide: peace. The peace of knowing you are building a life you can rely on. The peace of waking up without regret. The peace of looking forward without fear. Peace is not the absence of challenges. It is the strength to meet them without losing yourself. And it is in this peace that your potential expands beyond what you imagine. Because when you are no longer consumed by doubt, fatigue, or regret, you create space for vision. You can dream bigger because you are no longer weighed down by the weight of broken promises. You can push higher because your energy is no longer drained by internal conflict. You can step boldly into opportunities because you are no longer questioning if you deserve them. You know you do. That knowing is what makes you unrecognizable, not just to others, but to yourself. And as you look back, you realize that every small action, the glass of water, the pause for breath, the moment of movement, the decision to sleep, was not small at all. It was everything. It was the proof that transformation is not built in leaps, but in steady steps. And by choosing those steps every day, you have rewritten your story. You are no longer who you were. You are living as the strongest, clearest, and most powerful version of yourself. And this is only the beginning. What you are stepping into is not just a new lifestyle, but a new identity. The world may see the external shifts, the sharper focus in your eyes, the stronger energy in your presence, the undeniable change in how you move through life. But what truly makes you unrecognizable is what happens inside. It is the silence of self-doubt replaced by the steady voice of certainty. It is the release of shame replaced by a deep sense of self-respect. It is the way you no longer chase worthiness from others because you have built it within yourself brick by brick through every small act of care. That inner identity is what sustains the transformation long after the initial excitement fades. This identity shift is powerful because it rewrites the way you respond to the world. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond with clarity. Instead of being pulled into distractions, you stay anchored to your priorities. Instead of falling back into old patterns, you catch yourself and rise above them. The person you once were, the one who doubted, who delayed, who felt powerless, cannot survive in this new identity. That version of you has no place here because you have proven through action that you are someone else entirely. And once identity shifts, behavior follows effortlessly. You do not force discipline. You live as discipline. You do not struggle to act healthy. You act because health is who you are. Psychologists call this alignment between identity and action one of the strongest forces for long-term change. When what you do matches who you believe you are, resistance fades. Habits no longer feel like chores. They feel like expressions of self. This is why the micro habits matter. They are not random tasks on a checklist. They are daily reminders of the identity you are choosing. Each one reinforces the story you are telling yourself about who you are becoming. And the more you repeat them, the stronger that story becomes until it is no longer a story. It is your truth. And the truth is liberating. You are no longer chained to the cycle of starting and stopping because you are no longer trying to change from the outside in. You are transforming from the inside out. This is what makes change permanent. Surface level shifts can fade, but identity endures. And once you see yourself as someone who honors their body, their mind, their time, and their energy, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to living small because you know you were made for more. This unrecognizable version of yourself is not a stranger. It is the real you, the one who was buried beneath layers of neglect, fear, and doubt. And every small act of care has chipped away at those layers to reveal the strength that was always there. You realize now that the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about uncovering who you truly were all along. And when you stand in that truth, you radiate a power that cannot be faked, a power that others notice, but more importantly, a power you feel every time you wake up and every time you act in alignment with your highest self. This is the point where transformation stops being about effort and becomes about embodiment. You are no longer chasing change, you are living as change. And with every choice, every breath, every action, you are creating a life that not only looks unrecognizable, but feels unstoppable. When you live from this new identity, something extraordinary happens. Your definition of success changes. It is no longer only about reaching external milestones because you now understand that true achievement is measured in alignment. It is measured in the way your daily actions reflect your highest values. It is measured in the peace you feel knowing you are no longer betraying yourself. Success becomes less about chasing and more about embodying, less about proving and more about becoming. And in this shift, life feels lighter because the weight of pretending falls away and the freedom of authenticity takes its place. This freedom fuels courage. You no longer hesitate when opportunities appear because you trust yourself to rise to the occasion. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer controls you. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move anyway. And when your habits have built the foundation of self-trust, courage flows naturally. You do not wait to feel ready because you know readiness is created through action. You act, and the courage grows with you. This courage expands your world, pushing you beyond limits you once thought were unbreakable. And here lies one of the greatest rewards of transformation. You begin to dream bigger, not because the dreams suddenly became possible, but because you finally see yourself as capable of holding them. You no longer shrink in the face of vision. You welcome it. You invite it. You understand that the same discipline that carried you this far will carry you further. The same micro habits that once felt like small victories are the very tools that will build empires, heal relationships, create freedom, and design a life you are proud to live. Dreams stop being distant fantasies and start being natural extensions of who you are becoming. The beauty is that others may still see the outer transformation, the healthier body, the calmer mind, the brighter energy, but you know the deepest shift is invisible. It is the inner quiet that says, I can trust myself. It is the unshakable confidence that whispers, I will not quit. It is the unbreakable belief that reminds you, I was made for this. That invisible shift is the most powerful of all because it cannot be taken from you. It is not dependent on circumstances, on recognition, or on luck. It is built in the private moments when you choose to act in alignment, and it grows stronger with every repetition. This is the kind of strength that lasts, the kind that doesn't crumble when challenges rise, the kind that doesn't disappear when people doubt you, the kind that doesn't fade when results take time. It endures because it is woven into your very identity. And when you live with that strength, you carry yourself differently. You walk into rooms with a presence that speaks louder than words. You face obstacles with a calm that unsettles fear. You meet life with a power that turns resistance into fuel. And perhaps the most breathtaking realization is that you have become the person you once wished you could be. The version of yourself that felt so far away is now your reality. And standing here, you realize that becoming unrecognizable was never about escaping who you were. It was about stepping fully into who you were always meant to become. The realization that you have become the person you once longed to be is both humbling and electrifying. It shows you that growth is not reserved for the chosen few. It is available to anyone willing to honor the smallest actions with relentless consistency. And this awareness ignites a new fire within you. Because if you have already transformed in ways that once felt impossible, what else might be waiting for you beyond the horizon? What other limits are illusions, waiting to be shattered by persistence? This is where your transformation deepens, because you no longer see challenges as barriers, you see them as invitations. Every obstacle is a call to rise, every setback a chance to prove to yourself that nothing can break the foundation you have built. This perspective changes everything. Instead of being crushed by difficulties, you use them as fuel. Pain becomes a signal that you are growing. Discomfort becomes a sign that you are expanding. Resistance becomes evidence that you are moving in the right direction. Most people run from these moments, but you have trained yourself to embrace them. You understand that the very habits that rebuilt your foundation are the same habits that will carry you through storms. This resilience makes you unshakable, and it is this unshakable nature that makes your transformation irreversible. And it is in this strength that you discover a deeper truth. Self-care is not selfish. It is the most generous act you can give the world. Because when you are whole, you can give more freely. When you are strong, you can support others without collapsing under the weight. When you are clear, you can inspire without forcing. Your transformation does not end with you. It ripples outward, touching everyone who crosses your path. People feel it in your presence. They see it in your eyes. They sense it in the way you live with intention. Without even trying, you become a source of permission for others, a living example that change is possible, that growth is real, that becoming unrecognizable is within reach. This influence is not about preaching or convincing. It is about being. When you embody the very habits that transformed your life, you radiate authenticity. And authenticity has a power that words alone cannot create.